Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I've had a few questions about the builds that I use in my Elder Rift runs. We're going to take a look at this today and also check the updated version. Let's go. So this is the original build that I was using, and this has been used for Elder Rifts, Terror Rifts, Ereban and also Verge. Just a really quick build to basically walk through mobs with. But you can see the damage from this is 24 million in 10 seconds, so 2.46 million per second. So not the strongest build, but some nice consistent damage from the skills here. So we're going to compare this to what I have updated to for running rifts and everything else with as well. So basically this is just my farming build, and this is just a build that is nice and fast to use throughout different instances in game. So this is now the updated build I've been using, and this is including some of the new essences, which I'll talk through in a moment. But you can see here in a 10-second burst, we're getting a really nice 33.8 million damage, and that is 3.38 million damage per second, or just slightly under. So now let's take a look at the essences that we're using in this build. Starting off with set items, we're using 4 pieces of Vitu, so this increases the duration of all beneficial effects on you or your party members by 30% and increases the target's attack speed by 30% for 3 seconds each time you use a skill to grant a beneficial effect to yourself or a party member. Alongside this, we're using 4 pieces of Grace. All continual damage, channel damage and persistent ground damage is increased by 15%, and each time you damage an individual enemy 5 times, you will do 18,843 additional damage to that enemy. Moving on to legendary gear, we have Autumnal Crest on the helm. Slow time now surrounds you with a static field that follows you, damaging and applying shock to all nearby enemies. Damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. Moving on to the chest, we're using a solid favourite for farming, which is Sprite Spark. Lightning Nova now transfigures you into a ball of pure lightning, allowing you to move at high speed and continually deal damage. Apologies for that friend challenging me. Continue to deal damage to any nearby enemies. Damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. Another new essence here on the shoulder is Filtered Defense. So with this one, Disintegrate now surrounds you with an entropy field that follows you, damaging and making nearby enemies vulnerable to critical hits. Disintegrate damage increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. Novel Castigation on the pants, a solid favourite. Arcane Torrent also fires tracking missiles that seek out enemies, dealing 13,558 damage. Damage is increased 90% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. Rift Carver on the main hand. I feel like I don't even need to talk about this one, to be honest. It's in all my builds. Arcane Torrent now creates a chaotic god that moves with you. Damage is increased 18% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot there as well. We're using Frenetic Spark on the offhand. Lightning Nova cooldown is reduced 18.6% and damage is increased 10%. Entropic Edge, nice and simple. Disintegrate damage increased 90% and the energy is consumed 10% slower as well. And then lastly, on the alternate offhand, we're using another solid favourite, which is Blaster Cast. So with this one, Magic Missile fires 2 additional missiles, each dealing 5,092 damage. Damage is increased 90% and an additional 10% from the awakened slot. I do need to look at some of my cursed properties on those gear pieces though, so just ignore the cursed properties for now. Moving on to Resonance and looking at legendary gems, we've got Blood-Soaked Jade, Starfire Shard, Roiling Consequence, Pain Clasp, Seeping Bow, Bottled Hope, Gloom Cask, and lastly Mother's Lament as well. So we have a few critical hit or critical chance gems there to go alongside the shoulder. Then we have my charm with a few buffs for these skills as well. For Warband buff, I'm using the Protector buff. This increases block chance by 5%, but the reason I'm using this is the increased life and size. This makes it a lot easier to move at a high speed in dungeons, Elder Rifts, etc. Paragon, I'm using Slinger. You can see the same skills as always. We've got Unseen Dynamism, Fury, Uncanny, Gifted, and Deadly Intent there as well. So not really any change in the Paragon that I'm using. You could use Brawler if you wanted to be even faster, because that also increases your size. Now this is the breakdown of damage from the skills that we're using. So you can see that unfortunately slow time isn't giving that much damage, but overall it is a nice build. Now we're going to run an Elder Rift and see what this looks like in reality. Nice, so we got one of the best maps in the Elder Rift to actually test this on. Now, I don't know if you noticed that, but I have this issue quite a lot with Elder Rift where I enter and the mobs don't spawn straight away. So there's a few times I've actually run through mobs and they've not even been there until I'm the other side of them. Let me know if you get that bug as well. I don't know if it's a bug or if it's just delay, if my game, because I've got a new device, if it's just loading in quicker. Yeah, let me know. But you can see with this build you literally just walk through everything, and although obviously the difficulty for Elder Rift is quite low, I find that even with this build in a full party I can still walk through like this, and it does defeat the mobs even though the life is higher on the monsters when you enter it in a party. So pretty much a really smooth build to run, and the damage is just super easy. We'll see how quick we can take down the boss as well, and yeah, literally so easy to use, and the rift is completed in under a minute as well. So this makes it super fast running Elder Rifts. We're also going to go and test this now in open world. We're going to go to Wortham, because this is one of the easiest places for me to test stuff because there's never anyone else around. So there's a few things that make this build really good. The first thing is having Vitus in the build. So this really helps with things like Sprite Spark. Obviously we have the reduced cooldown on that from the Frenetic Spark offhand. However, with Vitus it obviously increases the duration of your beneficial effects. If I had the Reforged bonus of beneficial effect duration on all my gear, this would make Sprite Spark have 100% uptime, which is just amazing when you're farming or trying to do anything in a rush. Obviously, like I mentioned at the start, I could use the Brawler tree to make this build even faster because it would increase my size for my character as well. But I find this is kind of enough. If you're running too fast and you're in an open world party, or if you're in Abyssal Verge or Terror Rifts, you want your teammates to be able to keep up with you, and it can make you a little bit too fast if you use Brawler as well. But obviously it's completely up to you if you want to use that. But you can see you literally just walk through everything. Everything just dies really easily. Super fun to work with. And if you have a monster that doesn't die straight away, because this has the damage over time from roiling and from Seeping Bile as well, generally it will die eventually anyway. So obviously for those that don't have Seeping Bile, you could swap that out for Viper's Bite. That works beautifully in this build as well, from damage over time. So if you're a little bit, like if your combat rating isn't quite as high, or if your damage isn't quite as high, put Viper's Bite into this build, and any monsters that are left behind and aren't yet dead, they will die from Viper's Bite as well. So that is it for me from this video. I hope you found this helpful and enjoyed this build. A few people have asked for it, so I thought I'd make an updated version. And for now, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.